Kia ora everybody, and welcome to the Waipuna Halswell-Hornby-Riccarton briefing. And thanks very much for Avril for coming and joining us today. And you're going to present to us on the EcoCentral recycling, which is really, really important to everybody in the city. And I'm very conscious of what we're supposed to do, but anyway, I'll just hand over to you then, Avril, and you can take us through that. Yeah, thank you. We're in your hands.
Perfect. Thanks very much, Mike. So I'll just share my screen. That one. Share. And you should be able to see.
Yes, that's the one.
There we go. We'll start from the beginning, right?
Sorry. Yeah, I just wanted to just. Oh, yeah, you done the apologies, didn't you, Matthew? Yeah. Okay. Where we go? Yep.
Okay. Well, just firstly, thank you very much for inviting me to speak to your group meeting. It's always a privilege for me to get out and talk to people about recycling. It's something I'm really passionate about. I count the recycling bin as my supermarket shopping trolley, if you like. So I like to see the right things in my trolley. So I'm just going to cover off on six primary topics. A little bit about us, about EcoCentral. Want to cover off a little bit about the past. We don't need to dwell on that too much, but I think we need to acknowledge where we've come from. A little bit about the current situation and give you some more updates on how we recycle and how that's going. A bit on our commodities and something about the constraints that our plant faces, and then looking to the future, and then summarising and not trying to look too doom and gloomish on it all. So I hope that you can find something useful in here. So EcoCentral is owned by the Christchurch City Council through their holdings company. So our sister companies are the airport, the port company, Enable, City Care and Orion. So we see ourselves as a very important utility that services Christchurch. We operate under three banners. So we have the EcoShop, which is located on Blenheim Road. And that's the old revised revamped super shed that was down in Aranui. So we moved to Blenheim Road in around 2011, I think it was. And that shop traditionally diverts just over 1,000 tonnes per annum from the waste stream, which is really important. They employ 32 people. Some of them would have some I guess, backgrounds that would disadvantage them from finding meaningful employment. So one of the things that Jules, as the manager down there, strives for is looking at social enterprise and social good and employing people and helping them, give them some meaningful skills. It washes its face. So by that I mean it's not designed to run at a profit, but it's not designed to run at a loss either. So it covers all its expenses and is a really integral part and flagship for the company. The EcoDrops are, thanks Mike, the EcoDrops are 3 metropolitan transfer stations that operate under the banner EcoDrop. They receive all the red bin curbside rubbish. They take public and commercial waste, and it'll be fair to say that the EcoDrops are the primary waste providers for the public. They operate 7 days a week and they're employing around 35 people. And then lastly, the EcoSort, which is what we're going to talk about this afternoon. They're located on Parkhouse Road. They're receiving recycling from Christchurch City Council, Waimakariri, Huranui, Selwyn District Councils, Western Council sends us their recycling, and of course we receive commercial recycling from the commercial waste disposal operators. They've just moved to 2 shifts, so they're running 16 hours a day at the moment, 5 days a week, and they're employing around 55 people at the moment. Traditionally, those roles down there are taken by temps. It's very difficult finding enough people in Christchurch at the moment to do that sort of work, so we're reliant on temps, and that's been a bit difficult at the moment with the borders being closed. So a little bit about me. That's me, and normally if you get a picture of me, there's a little boy attached to it. So I'm very lucky to have care of a lovely 5-year-old. So I've worked at EcoCentral since 2002. If you want to do the math, I started when I was 12. It's my job to broker the recycling. So I'm finding sustainable homes through a variety of different international brokers and making sure that where we're sending our material is a good home for it. I also take care of the customer relationship management for our larger customers, like Christchurch City Council, waste management, those sorts of companies. And it's also my job to make sure that we're compliant within the company for our certifications, bylaws, resource consents, those sorts of things. So it's a really interesting and at times challenging job. So I drink heavily. But the recycling process, I just need to cover off a little bit about that. The plant sorts by size and shape. So it's very clever, but it never replaces a human's eyes and hands. So firstly, it takes off any flat items that it recognises. So it sorts the paper and cardboard. Unfortunately, when we're talking about flat items, it's also capturing soft films in the paper. It's taking off large lids like ice cream container lids. It's taking off things like plastic plates, and it's taking off a lot of clothing in that waste stream. So at that conveyor belt where the paper and cardboard comes off, we have every station filled with the person, and that person is charged with pulling off all the waste that gets through the plant. Next, the steel and aluminium cans come off. So the steel cans are taken off using a very high powered magnet. And if you've got a pacemaker, I wouldn't suggest that you go anywhere near it. It's a very high powered magnet, but it takes off the steel cans. Aluminium cans are taken off using an eddy current, which operates in reverse twang, so it gives it a shot and repels it into the correct hopper. And then we have two optical sorters that sort the plastics into 3 grades. And primarily we're looking for 1s, 2s and 5s. The problem with this process, and it's an international process, so it's just the way it's designed, is that misshapen objects fool the plant. So if you squashed your beer can or you've squashed your plastic bottle to such an extent that it's flat, the plant will be fooled into thinking that it's paper or cardboard. It sorts recycling very well. It doesn't sort rubbish at all. So anything that mimics either a flat item such as paper or cardboard, that's rubbish, will sort as recycling. Anything that has some 3D property to it, and you'll have to forgive me, I'm normally used to waving my arms around when I do my talks, but anything that has some 3D property to it, like a rolled up dirty nappy, will be read by our plant as a plastic item. So all of the rubbish that has fooled our plant has to be pulled off by a person. So we're concerned about the amount of waste that those people are handling. Just need to cover off a little bit about COVID, the recent COVID past. When New Zealand started talking about the impact that it might have on homes and families in the late 2019s, early 20s, we saw a significant spike in contamination, and it was a national trend. So it wasn't particular to Christchurch, but where we would normally see an average load contain sort of 6 to 10% contamination, we saw spikes where trucks were coming in with loads of up to 35-40% contamination, which was horrendous. We were really concerned about our staff handling that much waste, given that all of the waste is pulled off by a person. And we were really concerned about the different types of waste that we were seeing. So this PowerPoint, the picture in the PowerPoint shows medical waste. We receive a lot of dialysis bags, a lot of colostomy bags, and we were seeing all of that sort of waste. We were seeing a lot of rotten organic matter, food, rotten pumpkins, and we were seeing a lot of dead animals and things like that. And we can't explain the phenomenon. We just know that before we went into lockdown, we saw a huge increase. So we were concerned about the risk of staff handling so much waste. The international markets, of course, they had been hit by COVID a lot sooner and a lot more vehemently than we had. And so the markets were closing to us. So if we collected the material, we had nowhere to send it at that stage. We were stockpiling. So we made the difficult decision to stop processing for a period of 4 weeks. During that time, international markets had started opening. We had orders that we needed to fill. We'd negotiated with the CCC about how we could minimise the risk to our staff of handling so much waste, and by that I mean we established a very robust checking system for incoming loads. So if they were too heavily contaminated, we rejected them. We didn't attempt to sort them. And I think that when we first came out of lockdown in the beginning of May 2020, about 95% of all the recycling trucks were being diverted to landfill simply because they were over-contaminated. So the present situation, so the contamination continues, unfortunately. There are areas in Christchurch who continue to be poor recyclers. in defiance of the work that CCC and EcoCentral have done in educating and trying to impart that to them. On average, we would continue to reject probably 10 to 20% of the loads each week. I think we had our management meeting this morning and we were down to around 7%. So that's good. But on average, it sits between that 10 to 20% being rejected, which is a shame because a lot of that material is good recyclable material. It's been contaminated with lawn clippings, rotten pumpkins, and a whole pile of other stuff. So current situation is there is a significant amount of money going into education and enforcement. CCC support us in their enforcement efforts and education efforts. The targeting auditing at curbside has recommenced after a brief stop over COVID. EcoCentral is funding trained educators to go into primary schools and work with the schools and the classes and the caretakers to improve their recycling and also take that information home to the families. What we found is that the kids are a great way of imparting that knowledge and they take it home and inflict it on their parents. So that's working very well. EcoCentral is also funding free buses to visit the recycling plant education room. So any classes that meet the learning through action criteria for the classes, we'll fund a bus for them to come and have a look at the EcoSort education room and get their hands-on experience of what the plant looks like and how it operates. The plant upgrade is well underway. We were lucky enough to receive, I think it was around $16 million from the MFE for a significant plant upgrade that will allow us to sort plastics more efficiently and more sustainably. And it also allows us to upgrade our paper sorting. And in our process, the paper is the most fragile of the streams because we're reliant on export markets to move the paper and cardboard. The plastics and the steel we can sell locally, but the paper has to be exported. So that's the most fragile part of our stream. We continue to maintain the production of a quality product despite the poor recycling habits. And we've done that by slowing the plant down to such an extent that it comes along the conveyor belt very, very slowly. And staff have the ability to pull more rubbish off the recycling plant conveyor belts. The issue with that is now we've had to move to 2 shifts to double our operational time, if you like, so as a result of slowing the plant down and so we can maintain that quality. Shipping issues, if they're trying to export anything at the moment, it's just a bit of a nightmare. So we have viable sales and good sales of the product. Unfortunately, we can't physically move it off. So I think in May we shipped March's production. So we're about 2 months behind. We've leased a large warehouse down on Blenheim Road where we're actually stockpiling baled paper that's pre-sold. We just can't physically get it onto the ships at the moment. So shipping issues are a real problem for us at the moment. The commodities, so we have sort of three main streams of commodities. So the product, while it might be waste when you think of it going in the recycling bin, it's a commodity for us, and we're selling it into sustainable markets. So we have paper and cardboard that needs to be flattened and and larger than an envelope, so no smaller than an envelope. We can't take post-it notes and EFTPOS receipts. So there are some size constraints on the plant. So we'd say flattened paper and cardboard, larger than an envelope. We're exporting paper and cardboard into countries like Thailand and India, and I'm really pleased to say that we've just passed certification inspections to export into Indonesia and Malaysian mills. So that's a real coup. And we've been able to do that because the quality of the product that we're producing, because of the manual input that we're putting in there, is really good. So when we sell into these markets, they expect a quality product. They expect between 98 and 99.5% paper and cardboard. So you're allowed between 0.5 and 2% contamination, which over 1,000 kilo bale is about 10 kilos. So not a lot. And the curbside recycling plant here is doing a wonderful job of maintaining quality. The main issues for us in paper and cardboard, again, are soft films, because when they come through our plant, they sort as paper. Flat lids are a real issue for us. The larger ice cream container lids, they mimic the properties of paper. Dirty paper is an issue for us, so paper that's had fish and chips in it and yucky paper like that is a real problem. And then squashed containers is another big issue for us, because if you squash a plastic container, it stays flat and our poor old plant thinks it's paper and cardboard. So those are the main issues there. Plastics. Most of the plastics that we are producing, the 1, 2s and the 5s, are sold locally and are processed within Christchurch, which is wonderful. We don't want to export anything. So where possible, we always look for onshore solutions. So the plastics need to be clean. They need to be not squashed. They need to be larger than 100 millilitres, but no larger than 3 litres. If the containers get too big, they get jammed in the blower pipes that we have at the plant. So might have been a little bit short-sighted when we designed the plant, but in hindsight, a little bit bigger would have saved us a whole pile of problems. So anything that's too big will jam the blowers and bring the plant to a screeching halt. All of the plastics is locally produced, is produced locally rather. So we would only export if they couldn't meet our operational needs, but it's all processed locally. They require 99.5% quality, so we can only have 0.5% contamination in what they want. And the issues for the plastics is that there are a lot of containers now that have plastic film wraps around them for their labelling. That's a completely different product. So when we're selling plastics, it's a rigid bottle and container. Soft films are treated as a contaminant, so soft wrap around the bottles are a problem. Trigger lids and lids still on the containers generally are an issue for us because it's a different type of plastic. They don't want that in the product that we're producing. And liquids in the containers cause a real issue for us because if the lid's left on and it punctures through our process, the liquid will come out and contaminate the paper, and that's the stream that we're trying to protect. Steel and aluminium cans, we need them clean and not squashed. As you can appreciate, if you put a spaghetti can in a container for 6 weeks in subtropical conditions, by the time it gets to the other end, the spaghetti's pretty rank. So we need them clean, not squashed, because otherwise they mimic paper and cardboard products. They're all exported. We sell them locally to a local merchant, but they're exported. There's no onshore processing of steel aluminium cans in New Zealand. Again, very high quality expectations which we consistently meet, and the issues for us are the dirty cans. So the pet food cans that still have pet food in the bottom, they'd be pretty yucky by the time they get to the other end, and when they get over to the countries that they're going to, odour is one of the criteria that they look at when they open up the doors to inspect the loads. So if there's an odour coming from the container, they will inspect more closely. So we try and keep them as clean as possible when we send them over. So I guess what I'm trying to say is that recycling alone is not going to be the solution to the problem. There's a whole pile of other things that need to happen. So recycling is a long way down the waste hierarchy for dealing with our waste. In terms of the waste hierarchy, reduction is the first way. So reducing the amount of waste that we all generate is going to be the key solution. So that's refusing items in packaging if you can, reducing the amount of packaging that you're generating or bringing into the home, or if you're a packaging manufacturer, just thinking about how you package things to make sure that it's made of something that is either reusable or recyclable. Reusing things that can be used more than once, and I guess for us that's where the EcoShop comes into. There's a big range of household items that can be reused, but when you're buying containers, maybe not buying a single use, buying something that you can reuse again. And then we sit third down in the hierarchy for recycling, so it's converting waste into new materials. So that's where we sit. So we're sort of in the middle. Then recovery would be extracting energy or materials from products. So that's could be waste exchange and waste to energy plants and those sorts of things. Then you've got treatments where you change volume. So you could take water out of a product, change its volume, and then you've got residual waste as the final option. So we need to be looking further up that hierarchy of disposal, of reuse and reduction rather than recycling. So flying on to there is about the future. I think New Zealand as a whole needs to have some better packaging design, and I've got a lot of ideas on that, but we need to have packaging that can be reused. We need to have packaging that people are able to refuse if they don't want it, and we also need to have packaging that can be recycled within New Zealand. There are a lot of products that are still being developed that while they are you know, they're innovative and exciting. They don't necessarily fit to our current recycling platforms. So we need to make things that can be recycled within New Zealand, and we need to avoid the greenwashing. And quite often that's happening with compostable products at the moment. And the government have released quite an interesting paper on compostables moving forward. Consumers, I guess, what we need consumers to do is be mindful purchasers. So when they're buying something, make some considerations at the supermarket checkout or at the greengrocers about what they're buying and how it's presented, and if the product is in a container that can be recycled or reused, and use their buying power. I could almost guarantee that if consumers refused for a couple of weeks not to buy a particular product because it wasn't in a recycled container, the packaging would change fairly quickly. And speak up when they see something that's not right. That would really help us, so that we could be a united voice in solving the waste problem. EcoCentral is committed to providing a world-class product, and I think we've proven that by the work that we're doing to open up markets for paper and cardboard, and the commitment that we have to selling onshore. We're only going to sell to reputable mills. I turn a lot of mills away who can't meet our due diligence process. So we only sell into reputable mills. And we'll continue to look for better solutions for local solutions for recycling. So in summary, and I guess if you don't take anything else away from today, I promise you it's not all going to landfill. The product that comes through the door and is accepted for processing, 97% of that goes to recycling. 3 to 5%, I guess, would end up in landfill because it's that stuff that we pull off the nappies and things like that. But 95 to 97% of it's going into good homes. I guess key summary points are: number one, the recycling plant sorts recycling, not rubbish. So if the wrong thing's in the yellow bin when it leaves home, it's almost too late. And everything that's in the yellow bin when it leaves home that's not recycling has to be pulled off by a person. And we're really concerned about that. There's some really dreadful stuff. And I thought about putting some provocative pictures up here, but they're just not appropriate. So any rubbish that goes in the bin has to be pulled off by a person. Some of the big helpful points that you can do is keeping all lids out of the recycling, regardless of what the lid is. Bottles, can lids, ice cream container lids, just if it's a lid, then put it into the red bin, unless you've got some alternative recycling for it. Make sure your recycling is clean. As I said before, if it's in a container for 4 to 6 weeks in subtropical conditions, by the time they open it up, it will literally be growing mushrooms and is disgusting. So we can't afford to have our products rejected at a destination country. It would be almost suicide for us to send product over that wasn't clean enough for processing. So we are really mindful about what into the containers. Don't put your recycling into a bag and then put that bag into the recycling bin. So the plant sorts by size and shape. It needs the containers individually. So if you've got a bag at home, tip the recycling into the bag and then put the bag into the red bin, because we don't take soft films in the yellow bin, but don't leave anything into tied bags or inside containers. Soft films, they need to go into the red bin or to an alternate recycler, and there are 1 or 2 in Christchurch that you can use. And if you and I guess, guys, if you can't do that, then please put it in the red bin, but don't put it into the yellow bin thinking we'll sort it, because there's so much of that coming in now, almost inundated. We need the public to keep costs down and make sure that we have homes with the material. We need the public to put clean, loose, and unsquashed plastics and products into the bin. So that's my story. That's my picture. I've put my email address there. I'm more than happy to answer any questions that you've got at a later date, or now if you've got some. But yeah, more than happy to answer any questions. And thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much for your delivery on that, Oval. It was absolutely brilliant, and the way you spoke through those through the process was excellent. I've a lot from it. I tend to just crush lids, and tins and stuff like that. So I've learnt that. So and they say you're never too old to learn. So anyway, I've learnt that. Any other questions? Any other board members got questions of Avril?
Yes.
Andre, yes, you've done a video on this, haven't you, Andre?
I have. This year, well, that was a couple of years ago. It was all accurate, bar one small point. So I feel like Avril would appreciate it, but also be very quick to point out that one small point. The first question was the provocative pictures that you mentioned that you didn't put on. Well, we all want to know what they are now.
Okay.
Are you able to email them to us?
No, but there were.
No.
We do seem on a regular basis to get a whole pile of sex toys come through.
Okay.
And a lot of dead animals. So yeah.
Bizarre. Okay. A lot of people aren't aware that bottle tops can't go in the yellow bin, but also the 1, 2, and 5 plastics. A lot of plastics that people will always use, like even a Wattie's sourced, the squeezy bottle, I think is type 6 or 4, whatever it might be. I guess what I'm wondering is how much of an issue are bottle tops causing? Because obviously they don't contaminate the rest of the load necessarily, but how much of an issue are they causing? And we've got some, we've got some people in the community who are recycling milk bottle tops, turn them into skateboards. We've got someone, I think, in New Brighton, turn them into jewellery. Like, is there going to be opportunities there for the recycled on a more wide scale?
That's a really good question, Andre. We've been talking about bottle lids quite a bit here at the office. So the issue when they come into the recycling is that if you have a green lid or a blue lid attached to a milk bottle, say, that we're selling for several $100s a ton, the lid is always a different type of plastic. So for the broker buying that plastic, that lid is a contaminant. So you can think over several 100 tons that will add up to some weight that he's paid for that he doesn't want to use, and essentially is sending waste into his process. The other issue with lids is if you leave the lid on the bottle and it has liquid in it and it punctures through our process, which they often do, the liquid will come out and contaminate the paper, which is the stream that we worry the most about. Because if we didn't have a home for plastics for a few months, we could stockpile. If we didn't have a home for paper for a few months, curbside collection would stop theoretically, because we couldn't physically stockpile that much paper. And the other problem is if you leave the lid on, when we come to compress the product into the bale, we can't get the air out to get a good bale weight. So it halts that compaction for our baling and transport. So those are the key factors why we don't want them in the yellow bin. What we're doing at the moment is we're working with quite a few brand owners on how we can start take-back schemes at our resource recovery centres, so the recycling centres at the transfer stations, and how we can have some sort of take-back there. Residents would have to make the trip, but those that are committed to recycling those items, I think, would be there anyway doing some other types of recycling. So at the moment, we've got a trial with herbicide containers and pesticide containers through ag recovery. We've also got the battery take-backs happening at the transfer stations. We're just about to launch something with Tetra Pak so that the Tetra Paks can be dropped off to the recycling centres. And I think, I know our operations manager here, Rob, he's really passionate about the lids. So I think at some stage we'll look at some take-back to be able to sidestep the yellow bin but still see them recycled. Awesome.
On the battery note, we do have a gaping geographical gap in the southwest of the battery recycling, but that's I have been given the response on that, and it is a whole big issue. The upgrade of the plant that you mentioned, will that upgrade mean any changes to what people can and can't put in the yellow bins, or will it be just improving what's happening at the other end with the status quo?
It will mean, so no, it won't alter what can go in the bin. What it'll mean is despite the poor recycling habits of some people, we'll be able to maintain a quality product. So at the moment, we have sort of 55 to 60 people working at the recycling plant over half of those are in positions called quality assurance, and that's a polite way of saying pulling the rubbish off the belt. So what we'll be able to do is when we've got optical sorters that will sort the paper better, we'll be able to put those people into other quality assurance roles rather than pulling dead hedgehogs and things like that off. So, so we'll be able to refocus them into providing better products. Yeah. So it won't change what we can accept, but it'll improve our outputs.
Yeah. And I love what I saw about offering up free buses for, to visit the recycling plant. I remember as a kid, we did have to visit the wastewater plant, which, was interesting, but we never visited a recycle plant. And how many schools are visiting?
Well, at the moment, none, because the schools have obviously had their restrictions on going out. But I think probably in the last 12 months there would probably be close to 80 to 90 classes have come for a heavy mechanised operational plant. That's a lot of children coming in and out. So a lot of schools picked up that advantage, and then we've got our educator going into schools who's taking the school on a 6-month recycling journey. So she'll go in, audit their waste, do sessions with the teachers, the children, the caretakers even, because school recycling is notoriously poor, and just take them on that journey and show them how they can make some changes. So that's really
I think it's awesome. I think it's one of the most effective ways, because sometimes there's just no teaching adults these kinds of things, but those kids will police those bins very thoroughly at home. So and they'll absolutely teach their parents.
It's very effective. A little bit underhanded, but I love it. It's very effective. Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks so much.
No, thank you.
Good questions there, Andre. We've got Mark.
Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you to Avril, and I found it very beneficial. I think it was last year, there was an open day at the plant, and it was fascinating to go through and to see what goes on there. Is there any plans for future
Definitely. So we would hold them at least every 2 years. There won't be one this year because we're in the middle of the plant upgrade. So I would say it'll be arranged with CCC sometime next year. We're a bit reluctant to put a date on it at the moment because with shipping issues with getting the product over, and then construction seems to be so difficult at the moment with a whole pile of constraints that we're a bit nervous about putting a date around it. But certainly next year there'll definitely be one.
Excellent. That was a really, really informative way to learn about what goes on and what needs to happen.
Thank you, Mark. I've got a question. It's not a question actually; it's a praise. The EcoShop and our dump, Park House Road, is they're absolutely wonderful staff. Absolutely wonderful. So I'd just like to sing my praises to them. And what areas of Christchurch are the sort of worst for recycling? Can you tell me that, April?
Well, it's a bit difficult to quantify that because we work on the days of the week and the runs. I know that Mondays and Wednesdays in week 1 are not particularly good, and that can span sort of quite a big area. Halswell with detention. Areas that have high numbers of university students, notoriously bad for recycling, and then there are some lower socioeconomic areas where there's some poor recycling, and that's why it's important for us to sort of, there has to be some enforcement, but there has to be some engagement as well. They have to go hand in hand. So we're working with Christchurch City Council about how we can not duplicate but complement what they do and get in there and work alongside communities. So trying to elicit some change but doing it nicely. Yeah.
Which pockets of Halswell? We need to know these things.
Yeah.
I couldn't tell you specifically because it comes to us in run numbers, but I could ask CCC to provide that information to you. Yeah, absolutely.
That'd be great. I had an update from them on that kind of thing about a year or so ago, but that would be useful.
No, I can do that. No worries.
Awesome, thank you.
And I think that's. Oh, have you ever thought about, or is there any possibility of compressing waste paper into like pellets or nuggets that you can burn on on pellet fires or anything like that?
We've looked at a whole pile of opportunities, and we're now into a position where we need to look more closely at how we can process locally. It's about finding something that would take all of the paper, because we don't want to have it going into 4 or 5 different products. It would be a bit hard to manage. So whatever we do, and that's certainly one of the options, it has to be something that will take all of the paper product, and we're producing around 1,500 tonnes a month of paper, so it's quite big volumes. But you're right. Eventually, it will go to local production in some form, because we literally won't be able to export waste products in the next few years. Okay,
because we did used to recycle that here. A lot of paper, turn it back into paper again when we had the pulp and paper mills and stuff like that. Okay, is there any other questions? I can't see any more hands up. Has anybody else got any questions? If not, thanks very much for your time, Avril, and it's been really, really enlightening. So we'll take that on and we'll spread the word in our communities and keep Christchurch beautiful. Of course, we've got, Enviro Schools Awards and that, and they're very, very into the recycling and, and worm farms and all that sort of thing. So that's a way to get the young people to educate their parents and their grandparents. So do you work with Keep Christchurch Beautiful?
Only in a limited capacity. So we would work more with Christchurch City Council and help them with things that they would need, and other people may come in and out of that. But potentially we deal with Christchurch City Council.
Yeah, well, there is another organisation, Keep New Zealand Beautiful, as well. So I just wondered if if you could have established more links with those organisations, would be really, really helpful for educating.
Oh, we'd look forward to that, Mike. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Good idea.
I'll see if we can make that happen for you, Avril.
That'd be great.
Okay, if there's no further questions of Avril, well,
No, thank you.
Just like to say thanks very much for sharing your time with us, and I'm pleased to see that they haven't turned the lights yet on.
No, that's right. Thanks very much, guys. It was nice to meet you. Thank you. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye now. Bye.